Good evening. Welcome to Branco Broadcast. I am Bob Branco. We're very pleased to have tonight Mr. Chris Ramsay, and he will give us his brief presentation. And right now, welcome aboard, Chris.
Well, thank you very much. First, I'll tell you guys I'm not a young man. I'm old. I'm going to be 64 here in a couple of weeks. But and it was sort of mystifying to me as to why I was asked to come on here. But I have led what I think is kind of a normal life. But if you guys do want to hear about it, I'll be happy to give you some of the highlights. I am a totally blind person. Have been blind since birth. I was what was known then as a RLF baby, which meant too much oxygen in the incubator. And I weighed 2 pounds and 10 ounces when I was born, and I've later been told that for that time I was kind of a miracle baby, although I suspect that many of you are in the same boat. But I've had people ask me, would you rather be blind, or why didn't you sue people? Well, back then, they were lucky to be able to keep me alive. I was born in a small town, or kind of a medium-sized town, Port Huron, Michigan, and raised in a smaller town, Marysville, Michigan, by my mom, Betty Ramsay, who I'm pleased to have here tonight, and also my father, Dave Ramsay, who passed away just recently. And, Mom and Dad were young people, 25 and 21, and here they have a blind baby, their first child. And I've often thought that was a very difficult thing for them to have to know what to do, because I'm sure at first they didn't have the first idea what to do. But I had a question that occurred, and I don't know if Mom is able to speak here, but if you are, Mom, I wanted to ask you, was it, now I have two younger sisters, was it easier to raise a blind child, or the same, or harder, or what? How would you compare raising a blind child to a sighted child?
I was given very good advice at the University of Michigan when we took you, when you were about 6 months old. And the psychiatrist there said to me when we were leaving, after they examined you and said you were healthy, normal baby, she told me, she said, don't take that baby home and just let him lay in a crib or sit in a rocking chair. You do to him, expect him to walk, talk, just like you would a sighted child. And that's what we did.
And and I as I remember, I was always treated, like a sighted child, and was lucky enough to be able to play with the other sighted children in the neighborhood. I didn't have any trouble getting along with them. I do hear some blind people say nowadays that they do. I knew one person I used to play beat ball with who said she didn't have many friends and couldn't get along well, and I just couldn't understand that, because I've always been able to get along. But I think it's because of the way Mom and Dad raised me. Now, one other thing that they did was they decided they wanted me at home for some reason, and so they set about with other parents to start a resource room, or which we called the Braille room, in our local elementary school, where 7 blind children went from maybe nursery school, and could have stayed all the way through the school system. And some of us did. I stayed in Marysville through their school system till the 9th grade. Other ones dropped out. Some went to the residential school in Michigan, and some other ones stayed also. But they had the town hire a resource teacher, and from the time we were 2 or 3 years old, we went to nursery school in preparation for getting used to kindergarten. And we spent, most of our time in the kindergarten class, some time in the Braille room learning the Braille writer, the slate and stylus, and, all those things you guys are very familiar with, and how to use Braille. In the 4th grade, we learned to type. And when I learned to type, then I could spend pretty much all the time in the regular classroom. And so we were phased into the regular classroom, but the resource teacher was always there to help us. And, Mom, is there anything you can say about what it was like to start that program or anything?
The principal of the school where this was all taking place was a wonderful woman, and she was very intelligent in education, and she would not let one of these blind children go into a classroom that the teacher that was there didn't want them. And they got to the point where all the teachers wanted these children in their room. That is the thing I really remember.
Yeah. That was Edna Firsch, was her name, the principal, yes. and there was some resistance though to having us, in the classroom.
Oh, right.
And then later on, we had some resistance. I remember in 7th grade, we had a principal at the junior high school didn't think that I could climb stairs, and so you had to take me over there, and we climbed stairs for him and showed him that it could be done because there were steps in that school, and so as the grades progressed later in Marysville, I graduated from the elementary school, and then I went to an intermediate school, or what they would call a middle school now. And I spent 9th grade in high school. And during that time, I did one thing that really was one of the best things I ever did in my life, and that was to get a amateur radio license. I had friends, my grandfather had a friend who was a ham operator, and he invited me over to his house, and we sat down and listened to all the guys talking on the air, and I said, gee, this sounds like fun. And I think before that, too, my dad had gotten the idea, or Mom and Dad together, that ham radio might be a good hobby for me. And so when I was, when I was 11, at Christmas time, I had this big box under the tree, which was a Lafayette HE80 receiver. It had 14 tubes, a separate speaker, and I didn't know what to do with it, but it was exciting. It was opening up the whole world of ham radio and shortwave radio, and you used to be able to listen to Radio Havana and all the propaganda stations on the air, which was kind of fun. I love the Cuban national anthem. That has a nice ring to it there, but don't hear it much anymore. But anyway, I got the ham radio license with some help, and one thing Mom did, sure she remembers reading the questions and answers to me, and I wrote them down in Braille. And by the time I'd written them down, I had them memorized, and I was able to take the test and pass the theory part of it. And I remember learning the Morse code out of a Boy Scout handbook, a Braille Boy Scout handbook. I was a scout, and I was not much of a scout. I didn't like camping that well. Me and the outdoors are not always good friends, especially when it gets cold. So I don't know how I would do up in Massachusetts, where you guys are, but I'd probably like it. Michigan wasn't too bad, but I'm not a big scout or camper, but I did use the handbook to learn the Morse code, which I always loved, and I still like talking to people on the air on Morse code. Well, ham radio allowed me to make friends through all walks of life, or doctors and lawyers and engineers and just, you name it, railroad workers, which is what my grandfather was, and the fellow who helped me with ham radio, George Emai, was a railroad worker, also worked with my grandpa on the railroad. So anyway, that I did that and progressed through school. Then my father got an opportunity to get a promotion, and we moved to the Washington, D.C. area. And they looked around for the schools they thought would be the best, and they picked some pretty good ones. They moved to Fairfax County in a place called Annandale, Virginia, which is where I am now. I'm not in exactly the same place that they were, but it's the same town and the same county, and that's where I am. So I had moved from a smaller high school of about, if I'd stayed in Marysville, we would have had a school of about 600 people. In Fairfax, the school was maybe 3,000 people, so it was a bigger school. So I kind of went over a week ahead of time and learned the school, and we also met some parents of other blind children in the area, and we found out that the services in Virginia were really pretty good, and in fact better than they were in Michigan for public school students. And I had a wonderful resource teacher named Carolyn Sledzik who I worked with and helped me when I got there in the 10th grade, and I actually did pretty well. I had good grades and well accepted by the kids and the neighbors at the school. It wasn't as hard an adjustment as I thought it would be, and I was happy about that. And in high school, I had a track coach who saw me helping a girl with her math in homeroom. He was my homeroom coach. He said, "Well, how would you like to be the statistician of our track team and the announcer?" And I said, "Oh, I'd love to do that." And so he allowed me to do that, and it meant that I could travel to all the track meets. And in fact, they were nice enough to like they would a manager give me a letter and a letter jacket. And, and for a high school kid, that was a great thing back in the day. I thought that was wonderful because I was sure no athlete. But I think the assistant track coach, who also worked with football, told Mom it's a shame that Chris can't see because he's a hell of a football player. He's got football legs. So anyway, that was that. I also was on the math team and the debate team in high school, and I graduated in 1970 and went on to college at William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. Had kind of a tough time in my freshman year. I had trouble getting books, and they made me stay in a single room at the time because there was a person who'd been there the year before that was blind who took advantage of some of the students and wanted too much help. And one of the people that she took advantage with for the help complained to, I guess, an important alumnus of the college who was I think it was her uncle. And so they squirreled me off away from the other freshmen with upperclassmen in a dorm and in a single room. But I did make some friends and persevered and didn't have real good grades in my freshman year, but improved and I majored in business administration and had a lot better last 3 years. I ended up with about a B average in college, which was okay. And then graduated from William and Mary. And then they asked me, they said, the business school came to me, and they were just starting their MBA program, and they said, well, how would you like to stay if we gave you a scholarship and get your MBA? And that covered tuition and books, but the rehab people, as they did back then, covered the rest of it. So it amounted to a free ride, for graduate school. And so I took it. I said, that beats working for a year and a half, and I got my master's. They waived, I think, a semester. And then I went out into the work world and said, well, where would be the most secure place for me to work? Well, I've always been interested in broadcasting, but I didn't think it would be a very secure way of making a living. Now, there was a blind broadcaster here in this area that did very well named Ed Walker, who just passed away. A wonderful guy. And he made a career, but I didn't know if I could. And my dad worked for the government. In fact, he worked for the same agency that I would end up with, although I didn't know it at the time, U.S. Customs, and now Customs and Border Protection. So anyway, I sent letters and resumes out and went downtown and interviewed, and, it took about 3 months at that time, but I finally found somebody who was willing to give me a chance. And I contacted a handicap coordinator or selective placement coordinator that's in charge of placing the handicapped people. And they said, well, do you think you could do labor relations? And I said, well, I've had some labor relations classes. And so they found me a job in Health and Human Services and labor relations. And I worked there for a year and a half. And then somebody there went over to Customs, and the Carter administration just happened to be looking for somebody that was disabled to work in a professional job. And I was recommended, and I interviewed, and I got hired. And I was told at first, I was told a year later, after I passed my probationary period in Customs, I was told, Chris, when you got hired, we didn't know if it was going to work out, because my boss, my supervisor, told me that his boss, meaning his boss, told him that he had some good news and some bad news when they first hired me. The good news was that there was somebody to fill his position as a labor relations specialist. The bad news was that it was a blind person. So they weren't really convinced that a blind person could work out. And they just told me, said, you've worked out better than we expected, and so on and so forth. And well, I continued to work out, I guess, for about the next 29 years, because I stayed there for 30 years, working in all kinds of labor and employee relations capacities. Got to travel around the country a good bit, working on discipline cases where I had to I would do everything from the beginning of the case to the end. There'd be an investigation. I'd read the report. The employee had to get a letter that would tell him why he was being disciplined, and kind of with reasons or charges, and then specifications, which lays out, on such and such a date you did this or that, and we had to be able to prove it. So it was sort of a legal type of work. And, I was able to do that at first with readers reading the reports, and then later as we got computers with scanners reading them. And, like I said, I did get to travel. Also, when the employee got that letter, then he had a chance to reply, and I sat there with the manager listening to those replies, and I would be recommending, based on, the case law and so forth, what the manager ought to do. Should we keep the guy? Should we suspend him, or should we fire him, or should we do nothing? And so it was an interesting job, although not a real fun job, because it was very negative in some ways in that way. Also worked on labor negotiations, grievance resolution, a lot of interaction with the union that represented our employees. So that's what I did. It was kind of a middle-level position. And, I was proud. I was proud that I was able to do it, and I retired in 2007. I had kidney cancer before that and some other health problems, and it was clear to me that I wasn't going to be able to keep up the pace, and I was able to retire with full benefits at that age. I was 55, and if you had 55 and 30 years, you could retire. So I did, and I haven't been sorry since then. And the thing that I was proudest of was that as a blind person, I was able to do work that sighted people did. I did it just as well as they did it, and I did it, I showed sighted people that we can do professional work. And I'm proud of that. That's and maybe I shouldn't be, but I am. Then as far as I was told you guys might like to know about my broadcasting. I said I was always interested in broadcasting, and around 1999, 2000, I started to collect music. You remember Napster was there. We could download music on the computer, and I figured that was something that I could do. And it was a few years after a divorce. I might mention, too, that I was married in 1982 to Julie Davis, and I met her. She was training me in the Arlington Library on the Kurzweil, the original Kurzweil machine. That's how I met her, and a year later we got married, and it didn't work out, but did result in two wonderful children, David and Elizabeth, who are now grown. David's 27, and he works for a company building theater sets and putting up lighting for events here in Washington. Elizabeth is a hairstylist and just had two twins, Max and Mallory, so I'm now a grandfather, which is really nice. And but with the broadcasting, so I would download this music, and I think Peter Shalley, who has now passed away, he was one of my ham buddies, told me about ACB Radio Interactive, which Jonathan Mosen and Dave Williams were starting. And he said, gee, anybody can broadcast on it that wants to if you can show the ability to do it. And they had some real rudimentary ways of how it is that you have to stream the titles. And at the time we were using Winamp, which you could do it with Winamp, but you had to configure it with a lot of plugins and different things you had to get from different places. So I went on their page, and they did have fair instructions, and I figured it out. And I was able to audition, and I got a job on ACB Radio Interactive. Paid the same as the Legend pays now, which is nothing, but that's okay, because it was fun, broadcasting. I think the first program I had was from 5 in the morning to 9 in the morning. I was willing to get up at 5 just to be on there, because it did go out worldwide and people listened. And so I was with them for 5 or 6 years, and there were some problems with copywriting and that kind of thing. And I went my separate ways, and then I got a call from the worldwide legend, from a fellow named Jay Daly, who was kind of representing them. He unfortunately now has passed away, but Bill Sparks runs the legend. He said, "We've heard what you do. How would you like to come and broadcast with us?" And I said, "Well, I would." And so I did the same show I did on ACB Radio, really the Ramsay Oldies show, which I still do Monday from 3 to 6, Tuesday from 1 to 2, and Wednesday from 1 to 4. So, and I've been doing that, and I enjoy the broadcasting. And it was interesting. I thought my dad would sort of think, because he was in some ways kind of a rough drill sergeant type of guy and stuff, and I thought he'd think, what are you doing sitting home playing radio as a blind person? Isn't that stupid? I thought he would think that. But I asked him about it. He listened to some of my shows, and he said no. He said he thought it was really great because the shows make people happy, and he thought I was good at it. So I was real proud to get the praise from my dad, because he didn't hand it out unless you deserved it. And I guess one thing I'll end with is in talking about how Mom and Dad treated us the same. They didn't really give me too much quarter. When I remember I was out running in the yard, and I run into a tree, and I'd come in and just be crying, and my dad said, "Well, what's the matter?" And I'd say, "I ran into a tree." And he said, "Did you hurt the tree?" So there was no pity in our house, but there was a lot of love, and it was a great place to be and to grow up. So I don't know if you guys have any questions, but that's pretty much, I guess the other thing is that now I'm involved with this Games Galore and More site, which you heard about a couple of weeks ago. Immigrant, Jan, and Shelley Gagne, who gave your presentation, are involved with it. And we do have a lot of fun playing games. Joanne gets on there, too, and we play Password and Chain Reaction. I think tonight we're doing a game called Slogans. I run a game called Jukebox, where sometimes people have to name, they give us a year, and I'll play a song for a part of a song from that year, and then name the artist and title, and they get points for the team. It's just a lot of fun. So if you're familiar with chat clients, or even if you're not, go to Games Galore and More and sign up, and I think you would enjoy yourself. So with that, I don't really have much else to say. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to entertain them.
Chris, this
yes.
is your mother. I thoroughly enjoyed your little talk.
Well, thank you, Mom.
I really did.
That means a lot to me.
Really brought back a lot of memories.
Thank you.
And I'm going to let you go and let all the people ask you questions.
Well, okay. You take care, and you have a good day. I'll call you later.
You too. I'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Any questions? Anyone? Jeff?
Yeah, what was going to say, Chris?
Yes.
I was going to say your daughter and grandchildren, are they in Virginia too, or where?
Yeah, they are in Virginia. All my children, luckily, are in Virginia. My daughter lives in Chantilly, which is about maybe 10 miles from me. And my son, Dave, lives in Reston, which is maybe 15 or 20 miles, I guess. And then the grandchildren live, of course, with the daughter. So, yes, we're all pretty closely located. And my significant other, Joanne, she's in Martinsburg, West Virginia, which is about 90 miles away, but she comes and visits, and I come and visit her pretty frequently.
And, who do you still have back in Michigan?
I have an Uncle Bart, my mom's brother, and I have a cousin, Wendy, and or cousin Carol Ann, rather, and my Aunt Pat, married to Uncle Bart. That's really about it. Everybody else, my grandparents on the Ramsay side are deceased, and my mother's parents, the Babcocks, are also deceased. So just an uncle and a cousin, pretty much. But a lot of memories. Also, a good friend, Dave Russell, who lives in Marysville, and really nice guy, hell of a piano player, a blind guy that I went.
Where is Marysville?
Marysville is in the southeastern part of the state, in the Thumb area, 60 miles northeast of Detroit.
Wow.
I don't want you to get a swelled head, Chris, but you did a really good job. I learned stuff that I didn't know about you before.
Well, thank you.
But one thing I really thought was neat was that your mother came on. I don't think I could have ever gotten my mother to come on to a thing like this. It was interesting hearing things from her perspective.
She's a wonderful mother.
Chris, I have a question. Do you still practice ham radio today? And if so, do you find the activity decreasing because of computers? And also, why would the computer take over ham radio, which is such a simple procedure to just hit a microphone button?
Yeah, there are a lot of aspects of ham radio that they're combining ham radio and computers. No, the activity, in fact, has increased, and yes, I do practice it. We just went to a ham fest this Sunday and bought a ICOM 756 Pro, which is a transceiver. I've got HF radios, and I don't get on VHF, but there are many bands that people can get onto, and then, like I said, there's digital ham radio, and where they intermingle the computers with the ham radio. A lot of people chase DX, which is distant stations on ham radio, and a lot of them use the computer hooked up to other people's radios to find out where the DX stations are. It used to be you had to just kind of tune them in and hope you found one wherever you happen to be tuning your radio. Well, no more. Now you can take advantage of all these other radios, and if you know what frequency the station's on, you can pounce on that frequency and you can talk to them. So, no, the ham population has gone up. They took away the Morse code requirement about 7 or 8 years ago, and or maybe more than that. I don't actually remember when it was, but it was.
I'm aware firsthand because I took my test in 2003 to become a technician. I still am. It was renewed, and at that time they weren't offering Morse code.
Yeah. So it's been a while ago, and but that has resulted in more people getting into ham radio, and also, all the radio clubs have classes. If you really want to be a ham, it's not too hard. There are books you can learn the questions. You can take a class with people, and then they have. It used to be that we had to go to the FCC to get our license, but for quite a while now, that was a program the government didn't want, so they gave it to volunteer examiners, which are radio clubs that apply to do that in conjunction with the American Radio Relay League.
That's what happened with me.
Yeah, I had a couple questions.
Go ahead.
The first one, what's the furthest you've ever talked to anyone on ham radio, and do they still teach the theory? Do you still have to do the theory if you want to be a ham?
Yeah, you do, but it's all in, there are books. There's a book called Tune in the World, and there are other books you can get that have all the sample questions. In fact, sample questions are on the web, so you can get an understanding of the theory. The farthest I've talked is probably South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Japan.
Was that voice or Morse code that you talked about?
Both.
Both. Oh, cool. Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Chris, you should be very proud of the things you have achieved and are achieving, and it's a great presentation. It was nice to hear your mother on the line and talk to her briefly before the presentation. What is one of your best impressions in regard to broadcasting, something that happened on your show, something maybe that you remember that stands out?
I can remember getting kicked off the Legend for playing an X-rated Christmas thing. That's one thing that stands out. But I don't know. I mean, I'd say the show we did today I thought was a good show, and you helped create that, Immigrant. What we decided to do, our Immigrant and Jan came up with this idea, actually, and they put the B-sides together for me and a list of what the A-sides were. They did all the research. I just played the records and introduced them. And so we did A-sides and B-sides. And it was nice. Joanne called me after the show and complimented me. It was a good show. I could tell. I enjoyed it. The listeners were up. You can tell how many people are listening to your show when you broadcast on the internet.
Are the shows archived?
I archive them. Yeah, if anybody wants a copy, if you wanted to set up a Dropbox or something, I could get you one. They're not archived anywhere else, though. At this time.
I'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
How many people listen to your show on the average, Chris?
No, well, not as many as you might think. On the Legend, the high total at any one time is 30 or 40 people. And that's pretty much what we get. Between, I'd say, the lowest I've ever had is maybe 25, and the highest would be maybe 50.
And he's got enough for another show too, or another show, maybe a little less.
Yeah, we do. We have enough B-sides for another show, and we're going to do one.
And people were making requests, so it was fun. We enjoyed doing it.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, does ham radio operators still? I remember way before computers and things that ham radio was noted for being around, like in storms and getting people in touch with people and finding people when there were hurricanes and earthquakes and things. Do you guys still do that?
Yeah, absolutely they do. And not only that, but they go out to events with the VHF ham radios, and they help, like with the Marine Corps Marathon is one they do here in this area. But especially when communications go down, and don't think that the Internet can't go down, because it can. Or if, God forbid, if there was some sort of a nuclear war, you could still communicate with radios. Ham radios and antennas, well, ham radio is just a shortwave radio, is all it is. That operates on certain frequencies that the hams are allowed to use. And the CB radios, which a lot of you are familiar with, are the 27 megahertz, is the only place they can operate, and they're restricted in their power. Hams can use up to 1,500 watts output. CBers can theoretically use 5 watts, although many of them get amplifiers and violate those rules. But, the hams are usually pretty knowledgeable people. Some of them are engineers. And, however, they all used to be, kind of engineers or electronics technicians, back in the old days, and they could all build their own equipment. Nowadays, not so much. But, just average people are getting into ham radio, and it's enjoyable. It's a lot of fun. I mean, I like it. I have a group I talk to every day on it, a bunch of old conservative guys who love Donald Trump and hate Hillary, and it's sort of fun to get their goat a little bit about it, politics and everything.
Chris, what do you think the fascination is with Internet radio? Why is it that people are willing to go to a lot of trouble building Internet radio stations, getting on programs where only 5 to 50 people listen, as opposed to old-fashioned, traditional, conventional radio where up to 100,000 people can listen, and yet people seem to feel that Internet radio is going to take over?
Well, it's a lot easier. The one nice thing about it is it's pretty much interference-free. I mean, once people can listen to it, they're able to listen. I don't know if it's going to take over or not. I know that people now have Pandora and all these other programs in their car that play only the music that they like. Myself, I don't listen to the radio for music anymore, but I do listen to it for news. Now, a lot of people are getting news on the Internet, or on their phone. You get an app of Fox News and all these other ones. But, I just think, first of all, it's easier to put up an Internet radio station. You can broadcast from your house just like I do with a computer and an extra and a mixer is all you need. A computer and a USB mixer, and there's a software called Station Playlist Studio, or you could even use Winamp, which is free. And you got those 3 things, and you got enough music files. You're on the air. Some of us, I think the reason I like it is I've just always been fascinated with radio, and I have never been able to get on regular radio, so I'm on Internet radio, and it's fun. I get a lot of relaxation myself out of just listening to the music.
The toughest part, Chris, is not the building of the station, is to get people to listen to you. There's so much internet out there for everyone to share, which makes it hard for each individual to get their share.
Yeah, it's hard to put, like the Legend, I've been talking to Bill Sparks, it seems to me what they ought to do is build some kind of national advertising campaign, but that cost would probably be prohibitive. Not only that, also, once you get a lot of listeners, the royalty fees, and they pay royalty fees for the music, would be probably too much for the average person to pay. The station would have to start bringing in some money somehow, and, it really doesn't. So it's pretty much a labor of love, and I agree with you. I don't know, if internet radio is going to take over, because I don't know how a station like ours is going to be publicized except word of mouth. And then, that's mostly in the blind community. We do have some sighted listeners that listen to us. I had a couple come up to me at the Ham Fest yesterday, but they hear me on ham radio, so they know the legend exists. They tuned us in and they liked it. So, people have to like it. Now, there is one woman that listens to us in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. She says there are no oldie stations on the radio there, so she tunes us in.
Hi, Chris. This is Julie. I just wanted to say how much I enjoyed your presentation, and I really enjoyed hearing about the work that you did with the customs agency and the work that you did with other agencies related to that, and also the sports-related things that you did. I found that very interesting. And you did a beautiful...
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Julie. It's wonderful to have you on here, and appreciate your friendship. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, this is Karen. I just wanted to say that, Chris, I really enjoyed listening to you. And don't say that you're old because you're 64. I'm almost 67. And I always think of it as 66 years young.
You know what? One of the neat things now, and you heard my mother. Well, she's 85, guys. She sure doesn't sound like she's 85. And a lot of the one thing I've noticed when I was a kid, all the older people sounded like this. Well, I don't know what I'm going to do today. We'll have to let's go over to Minerva's house. But now they don't. I mean, I think the health is better, medical care is better, and people like Mom, hell, she sounds like she's 55, not 85.
Yeah. But I just wanted to say, what kind of music do you like? What decade or type of music do you like the best? I like mid-late 60s music.
Yep, me too. I like some of the 50s, certainly all the 60s, and early 70s is what I would like best, and some of the mid-70s. Not so much the 80s, and certainly not the 90s and 2000s and the rap music. So, I like what I grew up with, probably just like you do. I mean, most people like
the Beatles and even...
Yeah, Beatles, Rolling Stone, the Beach Boys, the Four Seasons. And that's what we play on the show, so you ought to tune in. And,
great. Well, I didn't know much about the legend. I like internet radio. I listen to Ride Radio, but I'll find the legend and find
the Ride Radio. You ever hear my friend Doug Hunsinger on Ride Radio? He was on there Tuesday and Thursdays. Yeah.
I hear Rick on Saturday night. He does a countdown.
Yeah, that's a great show.
That's real interesting.
A lot of those state Ride. He started on ACB Radio just like I did. A lot of those broadcasters did. So did Doug Hunsinger, and he does a great show too. So,
Chris, how do we get access to the legend?
Karen, that Legend Oldies is very similar to Ride Radio. I think.
All right. Well, if you can get Tappan Radio or have someone put in Tappan Radio, Bob, you should be able to get it.
I have a file, Bob, that I can send you, or Immigrant can send you, that you can go right in to get Legend Oldie. In fact, Immigrant created the file, I believe.
Is there
a website for the legend?
Yes, it's legendoldies.com.
Legendoldies.com.
Get it that way too.
Yep. Legendoldies.com. And then once you get there, you click on the listen link, and it'll have various ways you can.
And if any one of you has a second generation stream, you can find it on the stream.
Yeah, you can search for it on the stream. It's in uTunes and TuneIn Radio and whatever one what does the stream use, Immigrant? I forget their name.
Yes, the stream uses uTunes. Mm-hmm.
uTunes, okay, yeah.
So you said you're on TuneIn Radio?
Yes, the legend's on TuneIn Radio. You can search for it in TuneIn Radio, yes.
You can find it through the iPhone. You can find it through the regular phone. I think there's a phone number people can call.
Yeah, I think it's, I'm trying to remember that number, 716-724 something. I don't remember it, unfortunately, but I can get that for you guys.
And it's on 24/7?
Yes. Yeah, it's on 24/7. When there's not a live DJ, there's automation. We call it Robbie the Robot.
Robbie the Robot. So when
probably
are you on regularly, like certain times in the week, or?
I'm on Monday from 3 to 6, Tuesday 1 to 2, Wednesday 1 to 4.
Hey, yeah.
Great.
And then occasionally I fill in for people.
Well, I'm sorry. Chris, this is Joanne. I was just going to say you did a great job, and it seems so funny that when you first started the radio, he would actually try to find out if he was on, and he would call me like at 2 or 3 in the morning. He did have some strange hours for his shows, and he would say, am I on the radio? Can you hear me? And this is amazing. Here you are today after you did that. I'm very, very proud of you.
Or, there were other times there'd be something wrong with the radio. I couldn't tell what was going on with the computer. Joanne at that time lived about 25 miles away, and this is how much she loves me, folks. She would drive in the middle of the night to my house just to help me figure out what was wrong. I mean, that's how much she cares.
Yep, it was fun. It's been a fun journey.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a question, Bob.
Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, you said you worked for ACB Radio. You mean the American Council for the Blind, right?
Yep.
Yes, they sponsored the radio station. They paid for, the startup costs and gave them, I think, so much money a year to operate. Now, I worked on the interactive channel, which was DJs. They also had like 3 other channels. They had one for that it was an old-time radio stream. They had one called the Cafe, which was blind musicians, and you could just hear them. And then there was another one. I forget what the other one was, but it was, there were 4 different streams. I just worked for interactive, like a lot of people that enjoyed, broadcasting did. And we had regular shows on there. I also did one called Chris's Country Classics, too, back then, where I played only country music.
Oh, do you like country music?
I like 1960s country music. I like the old stuff. I'm not real fond of the newer country music, but I do like it a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I do, too. The ACB telephone tape advertises their ACB radio. They give a phone number to call, and you can access it that way.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you don't have to hesitate about being proud of your work history.
No.
But I'm proud of you. You worked for the Labor Relations Board for all these years.
Well, I worked for Customs in the Labor Relations. I actually represented management. Now, the federal government, the Labor Relations Board at the NLRB, that's for private sector. This was federal government. We have the Federal Labor Relations Authority, which is the counterpart to the NLRB, but actually the labor law for the government is a little different than the private sector. There's no striking in the government. You reach an impasse, and then you will go to the Federal Service Impasses Panel to let arbitrators figure things out. So it's a little bit different, but I did learn a lot about labor relations in my work, and it was fun. It paid the bills, I'll say that.
Yeah, that is something to be proud of. I'm proud of you. You don't want to say it.
Well, thank you. You're very kind.
Yeah, I'm proud of you. Speaking of illegal strikes, I worked for a municipal hospital. I was a medical stenographer back in the late 70s to early 90s. And we, but I was union at that time, and we struck against the city, and it was an illegal strike.
Right.
But we were not supposed to strike, but it was eventually settled. But
well, sometimes that's the only thing you can do. Well, you remember the air traffic controllers in the Reagan administration?
Yeah,
they did an illegal strike.
Yeah.
The PATCO, and unfortunately that led to decertifying that union, and now there's a new air traffic controllers union, but they haven't had illegal strikes lately. Reagan fired all the air traffic controllers for that illegal strike.
I remember that well.
Yeah.
I remember, Yeah, very good. Very good.
All right. And Don, are you the Celtics fan?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Well, I just wanted to tell you, I loved listening to Celtics with Johnny Most when he was on WWDZ, man.
He was a classic, wasn't he?
He was the greatest. I always loved it when the Celtics would foul somebody and they didn't do what's wrong with them, and then when the Celtic got fouled, he gets rammed,
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. He was
a homeboy.
I like Johnny most, and also I used to love to listen to the Patriots, and we had a WBZ guy come down here and had a great career doing sports call. It was Ken Beatrice, who you might remember from
I love
WBZ.
Ken Beatrice. I used to listen to him on Sunday nights when I went back to Perkins for my high school years. I think my senior year, Ken Beatrice was doing Calling All Sports.
Yeah,
on Sunday nights from 6 to 9 p.m.
Yeah, and he was great. But unfortunately, he passed away recently down here. But
did he?
Yeah, he had a show called Sports Call, and he'd go, "You're next." That was the way he sounded.
The one thing that I admired the most about Ken Beatrice, well, there were a lot of things I admired about him, but the one thing I'm going to mention now is he knew a lot about every sports team. In other words, if I wanted to talk about the Arizona Diamondbacks, he'd know all about them. If I wanted to talk about the Minnesota Wild from hockey fame, he'd know all about them. He was good that way.
That's right.
What station was he on? Excuse me, what station was he on in Washington?
WMAL. And then later on he was on WTEM, the all-sports station, a little bit in the 90s, but mostly on WMAL, which carried the Redskins at the time. So, he was doing Redskins pregame and a lot of different stuff like that. But he was wonderful. And he had said to Bob that he wanted to do a national talk show. That was always his dream. Well, now it's too bad he's not around. There's all kinds of national talk shows that you got people doing on the CBS Sports and everything else. I think one guy you used to have there in Boston not too long ago that I liked on CBS Sports was DA, Damon Andelar or whatever his name was. He was on WEEI, I think, for a while.
When did Ken Beatrice pass away?
Early, let's see, I think it was late last year. I don't remember exactly when, but not that long ago.
Talk show hosts way before that. I remember The Brick was one of the first ones I remember.
Yeah, JT the Brick, yes. Yeah, I don't know where he is now. I don't know if he's still on or not. But he was, and Pete Franklin might as well have been. Man, I used to love Pete Franklin out of Cleveland too. He was terrific. A lot of those guys, and Guy Manella from Boz from Calling All Sports up there. I like him.
Guy Manella. Yeah, I remember him.
Yeah. And you get a lot of guys. Gil Santos. He didn't do.
He's still around. He's still broadcasting, as far as I know.
Oh. I say he's not doing the Patriots anymore. I think he retired.
No, he's on the radio every once in a while on BZ.
Oh, he is? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you the other ones that were funny, we used to listen to them in college, is Eddie Andelman, Mark Whitkin, Jim McCarthy, the Sports Huddle.
Yep.
Oh, God, they were funny. They loved them.
So what's your favorite team and what's your favorite sport, if you have one?
Oh, I don't know. I'd say my favorite sport is probably football, and I like the Washington Redskins and the Detroit Lions. But I like baseball, too, with the Tigers, and I like basketball. And to be honest with you, my favorite basketball team is still the Celtics.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
I'll say one thing about Johnny Most. He was so biased.
I like when the sports announcers are biased, though. I think it's good. I think, when they're rooting for their home team,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But he was so biased, either you loved him or hate him.
Excuse me.
But all the fans around here
I think Jeff has something to comment on.
I wouldn't, you can tell me if I'm wrong on this. I wouldn't be a bit surprised after pulling the NBA All-Star team out of our game out of Charlotte. I wouldn't be surprised if the Hornets moved to either Pittsburgh, St. Louis, or Seattle.
Well, they might have to move somewhere with that, the stance they have in North Carolina there. A lot of people are taking exception to it, so, yeah.
Well, I wonder what that would mean for all the other Carolina sports teams, like the Panthers, the Hurricanes.
I know they've got a lot of teams.
I don't know. I can't see the Panthers moving because they're champions right now. But you never know. I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
It's too bad that they have to move because of taking a stand, though. I think I admire them for taking a stand, and I think it's too bad that the NBA did that in the sports organizations and things like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think they ought to be able to do what they, well, it's a private business. They can do what they want to, I suppose, But.
Any other questions? We haven't heard from Marcy or Alan or one or two others. That's their shot now to ask you something before we conclude.
Is Alan? Is he still out there?
I don't know, Don, but we have about 2 more minutes. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions.
Because he's a ham radio operator, too, and I'm sure he would have asked a question. But he probably got another call or something. I don't think he's out there.
Bob, this is Lauren. I came in late, and I just want to tell Chris that it's very interesting talk, and I really enjoyed hearing all about his background and his jobs, and I wish him all the best.
Oh, thank you so much, and I appreciate it. It's nice to have you listening, and like I said, I meant it. I mean, I don't think what I've done is anything special, and it's very nice of you guys to take the time to listen to what I had to say. I appreciate it.
I'm glad to tell you that you're wrong.
I think you had a very interesting life, and I wouldn't have recommended you if you didn't.
Well, I know you're very kind. You guys are my friends. You don't count.
No, yeah, but we didn't recommend you just because we were friends. We didn't recommend you just because we were friends. We recommended you because we thought you'd be interesting.
Well, thank you.
We were glad that I took her up on her recommendation.
It's been my pleasure being here, and thank you. It's been my pleasure meeting you guys too.
Continued success with your endeavors, your broadcasting, your amateur radio gigs. I'm KB1JVU, by the way. If you want to hook up one night, give me an email or a call, and we'll try to figure out how to have a QSO.
I'll do that.
All right.
All right. Take care.
Again, I'm Bob Branco, and have a great week.
Okay. Bye-bye.